I don't have to go through my spiel about our being the second oldest circulating library in the United States. Anyway, welcome. I'm Ann Cleveland. And last summer, I got a sweet note from Susan Kinsolving, who had been a wide-angle speaker, suggesting that I get in touch with friends of hers, the wife who had just written a book, and she said either one of them would be great speakers. Well, I did so, and I suggested to Caroline that I thought it would be a great fit for wide angle, which she readily agreed, and she then contacted them, and we got them committed to coming down. Little did I know at that point that we were reaching out to truly Renaissance people who already had way more connections in Charleston than I do after almost 30 years. Reba and Dave Williams met on Wall Street after they had both finished their MBAs at Harvard. As they each embarked on remarkably successful career paths, they chose fine art print collecting as their main avocation, focusing on less well-known American artists of the first half of the 20th century. The opportunity for research appealed to Reba, obviously a very curious person. And as the collection grew, she went back to school and got a PhD in art history. Dave claims that he was then unable to unleash a lifelong collecting urge. Their collection grew to some 6,000 prints, and from it they created 17 exhibitions that traveled to more than 100 museums worldwide, including the Gibbs. Reba wrote most of the exhibition catalogs, and two of their exhibitions, as I said, Alone in a Crowd, prints from the 1930s and 40s by African-American artists, and The Sight of Music were shown at the Gibbs. In 2008, they donated the bulk of their collection to the National Gallery of Art in Washington and turned to a new interest, writing. Hence, we're in a library. Not that I wouldn't want some of the print collection. Reba grew up in North Carolina. She graduated from high school at St. Mary's School in Raleigh and earned a BA in English at Duke. In New York, she worked for McKinsey & Company as a researcher, and then on to Harvard, and was a securities analyst on Wall Street, and later wrote about finance and art, including a stint as contributing editor for Institutional Investor magazine. Dave attended public schools, he proudly says, in Austin, Texas, graduated from the University of Texas, and then came east, he says, courtesy of the U.S. Navy. He never went back to Texas, and for the last 20 plus years, he served as CEO and chairman of Alliance Capital, working with one of Charleston's great heroes, Dick Gilbert. Although they live in Connecticut, New York, and California, they admit that their hearts remain in the South. And to their great credit, they demonstrate their Southern allegiance, and more importantly, their love of literature and books by sponsoring an annual award for Southern fiction. I could go on for much longer telling you about how incredibly talented these two people are and how generous-spirited they are, but I think it's better to let them tell their own story.
Thank you, Ann. We have a lot to live up to that. Back to the near beginning, Reba and I have been marketing together for over 40 years. It goes back to, I believe, 1972, when we were both working for the same securities company, and went over to London to try to win international clients. And it seems like here we are again back on the marketing trail. This time, books, and in particular hers, which is coming out June 1st, a mystery novel, and mine, which will be coming out early next year, which is a memoir about print collecting. And so here we go back on the road. We've got engagements at independent bookstores and libraries. Friends have been nice enough to host private parties for us. we're selling books, just like stocks, only it's a slightly different audience, different places. So we've done this a lot, and are comfortable doing it. Frankly, never expected to be doing it in our very golden years. But here we are, and we're very pleased to be at what we're calling a preview, since the books aren't out yet. We're very pleased to have that opportunity to preview a little bit about our new lives and how we got there with all of you. In the course of our marketing activities, first with a securities company together, then with an investment management company where we both worked, we did undertake a hobby, in fact, a very major hobby. And the origin of that, and this is, I swear it's the truth, Reba had a friend who, as we were at that time working for the securities company, said, "How lucky you are. You can talk about the stock market every evening over dinner." Well, her hackles rose, and she told me, "We don't talk about the stock market every night over dinner, and we're not going to, but everybody's going to think we are. We're going to be the most boring couple in New York, or at least we'll be regarded as such. We've got to find something else." And the something else turned out to be print collecting, which is a little longer story, which I will omit, but tell you just a little bit about print collecting. And the best way to do that is to show you a couple of minutes from a DVD that we made as we were actually winding down our print collecting activities. But an old friend from college days asked me, he had been to one of our exhibitions, said, "Is there a good DVD on prints?" And we checked, and there was not. So my enterprising wife said, "Why don't you make one?" And so we did, and this is it, and it'll give you a little touch of what print collecting is all about. We promise not to full 55 minutes.
It was designed to be used in college classrooms or high school where they're teaching the arts, and so that they can explain what a print was and how they were made and so forth. And Dave was...
We reach a lot of people, sell them at a reasonable price, and do the work a lot.
Thank you. Well, the print collecting really took place over a nearly 40-year period. And as Ann said, Reba was writing most of these exhibition catalogs. She was also writing articles. But what she really wanted to do was write fiction. And as the collecting activity began to wind down, that's where she turned.
How is this? Can you hear me? Is it working? All right. So several people said speak up, and it's hard for me to do. I haven't got much of a voice, so I'll do the best I can. Well, I kind of grew up in the storytelling world. I told somebody once that I never took a shower. I was always in a waterfall in Hawaii or something, somewhere else other than my little home country town. And I really wanted to write stories. And as Dave says, it's because I come from a storytelling family, which is probably true. I just didn't get a chance to do what I wanted to do for a really long time because I had to eat and pay the rent and so forth, and I could get paid for writing other kinds of things. But when Dave retired and when we gave away the print collection, it was truly, kind of freedom time. And I set out to write what is going to be, I hope, as my grandmother used to say, if I live and nothing happens, a whole long string of mystery books with these same characters. And it's two young women, cousins, who go to New York to be in the art world. And people say how much of it is autobiographical. Well, I went to New York to earn my living, but there's not much similarity in backgrounds. And the two girls are very different. One is what I would call a girl a lot like many I knew through all of their youth. They wait for Prince Charming to come along and marry him, and they think after that it's going to be happily ever after, and they don't have another worry ever. And pretty soon they find out it's not quite like that. But that's what one of my characters is in that position. She's also trying to run a print shop. And the other one, Coleman, has a very different look at the world. She has absolutely no interest in depending on anybody, and she's set out to really make it in the art world on her own. And in this particular case, they are able to fight the good fight. I think that my mysteries will go back to the golden rules of Agatha Christie, where the bad guys get caught and punished, as opposed to so many stories today where they become the heroes. I just don't agree with that. So if you're into that kind of mystery, don't read mine. Well, this book will be published on June 1st, and some people here in the room have read it or read parts of it. Anybody care to raise their hands who's read the book? Oh, Bill, come on, you read it. Anybody else? Well, anyway, I think you will enjoy it. It's got something for everyone. And Black, coming very fast behind it, faster than I would like if I had control of the thing, is its successor, which is called Fatal Impressions, out next spring. And I'm trying very hard to write the third book right now, which is called Bloody Royal Prince, and I'm moving my entire cast of characters to London, whether they want to go or not. And some of them don't. Well, meanwhile, I was trying all the time to learn how to be a better writer. And I don't know whether or not that has happened. You know, somebody else will have to make that grade. But Dave got interested enough, or maybe lonesome enough, so that if I were going to be going off to school, he was coming with me. And so, let him tell you about his first experiences in writing school.
Reba had signed up for a distance learning course where you corresponded with your mentor, that's the terminology, by letter, mail, written paper. But 2 weeks of every year you met somewhere and had workshops, which means you met with your co-writers, co-students, and exchanged papers and criticized each other's papers. Well, the first of these was in Bath and London, and I thought, I'm not going to let Reba go over there by herself, and I tagged along too. And again, I didn't want to stay in a lonely room or house while she went to school, so I signed up just to see what it was like. Well, the first day of workshop, I went in, and my co-workshop mates were 7 women. They were all published writers. My publications had been quarterly and annual reports to shareholders. And this was creative, nonfiction. And I hardly knew what the word meant, but there I was with 7 women, the male mentor, who was very pleased to have another male in the group, came home from first day's workshop and told Reba, of which I was sure, that I was the dumbest guy in the class. And your response?
I said it was about time. He's always been, the star. I don't think he was ever even second in the class, never mind, kind of at the bottom. And I think everybody needs to find out they're bad at something. That's the way I feel about it. I got here early because I couldn't catch a ball, and not only that, I was scared to death. And Mary Bear will tell you that we were doing something like field hockey. I was at the other end of the field because I didn't want to get hit. So I never got asked to be on anybody's team either, as you can imagine. Didn't mind the bit. But anyway, Dave was adopted by these young women, and they taught him quite a lot about writing, and he went on. And I kept switching schools around because I was trying to find particular kinds of teachers who knew some things that I wanted to try to learn about. And so he necessarily kept changing too if he wanted to be in the same state I was or whatever while I was doing this. And while I was writing wrist writing, I was also writing a book that was, it was really kind of what they call backstory. All the things that they tell you not to put in your novel, but that you have to know about your characters in order to write it well. And in this case, it was about the children, and these girls as children, and their backgrounds and where they grew up and what their lives were like. And we did it as a little private book. It's called Angels. And it leaked from private onto Amazon, so it's out there now. And that might be because of the connection with, Restrike. But yeah, I urge you, if you like kind of sissy stories about children, and it's religious, and there's a reason why it's called Angels. And again, I think there's some people in this room who've read it. You might enjoy it. And not your grandmother might enjoy it. So I charged on ahead of that, and Dave, meanwhile, charged on with his. And we got to the part where you get out there and you have somebody who's selling you the book and you get a publisher. And then it began to get really tough because I, like a fool, thought all I had to do was find an agent, find a publisher, hand them the book, and then I could go back to write the other one. I didn't have to be bothered with all this other stuff. Well, man, I'm telling you, you don't ever stop being bothered by all this other stuff. And to begin with, we had to learn a whole new vocabulary. I came from a field where, a manuscript was called one thing, and as some of you heard us say, it's now called an arc. And I knew arcs as other things, but not a book. Anyhow, and it keeps on going on. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my day today that'll give you an indication of what I'm talking about. In New York, they arranged for me to be on a television program here this morning, a very short one. It's called
Hello Country Live.
And I got a huge bunch of things that I couldn't do from New York about doing this. And I had a coaching course once before, and the only thing I remembered they told me was not to wear bracelets that rattle, because that drives everybody crazy when they're trying to, do a TV show. But I got this. You can't wear black, you can't wear white, you can't wear red, green's not great either, and the best thing is blue. But it can't have a pattern because that does things on the machine. It makes things move around. And you can't do this and you can't do that. And they kept on with it. You can't wear long earrings because they distract. You can't wear gold because it glitters and it's bound. And I said, Dave, I'm going to end up with nothing on with this thing. And then they said, and you have to bring your own hairstylist and your own makeup person because we don't do it down here. I said, well, you imagine I do not travel with either. So I was just absolutely frantic about this. And, we got over there, and I really tried hard to do all the right things. I kept my clothes on because I wanted you to see what I tried to do, being a good and cooperative girl. And blue, pearls not gold, ladylike, etc. We got there, and I'm telling you, we were in a room full of people who were all going home, and not one of them, they had on dangling earrings, they had on spots, they had on checks, they had on black, they had on white. And I said to Dave, obviously the coaches in New York have not been to Charleston. So it was quite an experience, but it was also fun. And I'm going to pass on to Dave too, because he's been having a lot of adventures, mostly courtesy of having to deal with the problems that come my way that I can't resolve.
Well, we did have Reba had quite a time, both finding an agent and getting the book sold. I'm sure everyone's aware of the tumult that's underway in the publishing industry with Amazon putting independent bookstores out of business, electronic devices for books. Everything's changing. The big publishers are really cautious in terms of what they'll do. They'll spend lavish sums for a proven bestseller, and they don't care to pick up on a first-time author, whatever the talent might be. So it was a very tough go, both finding an agent, but eventually Reba did find a very good agent. You want to tell her a little bit about Emma?
Yes, Emma Sweeney is a wonderful person, and she is known to some of our good friends here, and actually is helping another friend here in the audience with his book. He can tell you about that. I don't feel like I ought to talk about it, but she has specialized in kind of surprising books, and she loved Reese Wright, thank goodness. But because I want to tell you about the previous agents before I saw her, a lot of agents would call me and say, I really want to recommend your book, I really want to take care of your book. And then it would turn out it wasn't my book they wanted. They wanted to tell me how to rewrite my book to their specifications. Instead of having two women, why don't I just have one woman and a man, Or instead of having the book be in New York, why don't you set it in Paris, or whatever the thing was. And somebody said they sure didn't know me, because that wasn't going to happen, But anyhow, it was a real joy to have Emma say, I just love the book, I don't want to change anything. And she was relentless in terms of trying to get it out there, to get a publisher. And you need somebody, if you're trying to write a book today, who will get out and fight for you, because it's just not easy.
And after a little over a year, close to 2 years, Emma did indeed manage to sell Reba's book to a publisher, which has launched us on this early stages of the campaign that we're now in. But it was a long slog, and very nerve-wracking and frustrating, and not a pleasant experience, both finding the agent and then sweating out the will the publisher take it. Well, in the meantime, I'd really gotten interested in writing, and I think I had learned something from my original 7 workshop mates and other classes that I took in writing. And one of the mentors, I'd written a little piece about print collecting, and one of the mentors said, you ought to consider writing more about this. There's some interesting stories here. And by the way, take a look at this book. And I was given a book called Used and Rare, written by 2 real amateurs. They're amateur book collectors and amateur writers. And they had written a personal memoir of their experiences as becoming rare book collectors. And they started out definitely in the used category and finally got into collecting the more expensive and the rare books. And the idea of this book really appealed to me. And so I thought, I'm going to try to do that and write the story of our print collecting. And went at it quite vigorously. And while Reba was completing her first novel, working on her second novel, worrying about the agent and the publishers, I was writing away. And I had in mind a publisher whose work I was aware of, when I got my manuscript in shape, that I thought, well, what's to be lost by sending the manuscript to this one publisher? When I get turned down there, then I'll start looking for an agent. So I sent it off to David Godine, a publisher of fairly fine books, Boston-based. Fine books, I mean, he was interested in illustrations and quality of reproduction of illustrations, quality paper, quality of everything. And my book was, of course, going to be fairly heavily illustrated. So I sent off the manuscript and the 150 copies of the illustrations that I wanted to use to David Godine, and a month passed, the second month passed. Well, before I go on this agent search, I'll at least try. So I called and got David on the phone. He had a faint recollection of our names. He said, "Oh my goodness, let me see. I bet that manuscript ended up in the slush pile." That's the publisher's favorite term. It's where the unsolicited manuscripts go, and that's what it's lovingly called. And so he called me back in the day. He said, "I found it. It was in the slush pile. Sure enough, I've just read a chapter, and this is just the kind of book we want to publish." This was a miracle. This just doesn't happen in today's publishing world. And here I was. This had happened to me instantly almost, whereas months, years have been labored here to try to find a publisher or another first-time writer. So my book, you know, David seems very enthusiastic about my book. In fact, you know, after he had looked at it a little bit, I was sure he was going to come back and say, you know, 150 illustrations, let's make it 75. These things cost. He came back and said, "I think you should add 10 more artists." So we're now at 160 illustrations. So that's the enthusiasm with which he has greeted my book.
Yes, and I've said over and over again that Dave is extremely bright, but he's also very lucky. Some people are, and some people aren't. And you know, that's the kind of thing that just doesn't happen. You know, you send the thing off, and the guy says, "Oh yes, that's exactly the kind of thing we're looking like upon." But anyway, I think there's a good chance that his book and my second book will be coming out right about the same time. His publishers said it will be between November and February, and they're talking about February or March for Fatal Impressions. And we've already been given our orders to start working on something which is very traumatic, which is the cover for Fatal Impressions. It's due June 8th, and it's just fight, because 27 people have opinions about what it's supposed to be, and nobody agrees on anything. And there you are, you know, devoting huge amounts of time to this thing when you'd like to be writing another book, and could be if you didn't have to do this sort of thing. But I have had 2 great strokes of luck, and I said to Dave, I hope I'm not stealing them from you. The first one was after I got it out there, and you know the book is being read in the little arcs by bookstores and people who review books and so forth. And I wasn't paying too much attention because that's, for one thing, I didn't have anything to do with it. And secondly, I didn't even know where things were or where they were going, and I didn't care. I just wanted to write my own book. So all of a sudden the phone was ringing and the emails were coming in. Dave, tell about that.
And there was a great excitement, and the excitement was a review of her book by Kirkus. Well, embarrassing. We didn't know what Kirkus is or was. Well, it turns out that Kirkus is one of a small handful of reviewers, essentially for the trade. They review not for the reader, but for the bookstores and the booksellers. And Kirkus had given Reba a rave review for her book, Restrike. And the people who were helping us and advising us said, this is unheard of. Kirkus hates everybody. And for some reason, they loved Restrike. Well, I guess there's a reason. And so...
they had a lot of reasons in the review.
It was quite a glowing review. And and of course, our group was quick to circulate Kirkus to everybody who knew anything about books. And sure enough, orders went up. Barnes & Noble doubled their orders. Another chain ordered, which they hadn't before. So it made an instant impact on the market where the Kirkus reviews were oriented. Well, we had another good break just yesterday.
Yesterday evening, when I was really still fussing because of having to get to the cover of this other book and knowing what a fight it was going to be. This news came.
Another one of these reviewers for the trade, called Forward, gave her another rave review and practically wrote the book. And here again, this is a review that will go to booksellers and the likes. And so we've got, I guess, 2 of 4 or 5 leading reviewers for the trade recommending her book.
Now this is all before the book comes out. These are the people who do that. So it was months before it would come out when I got the first one. It's still, of course, not June 1st. And a lot of people might hate the book when it comes out, but at least the preliminary kind of things are positive. It gives you a momentary lift before something comes along to hit you the next day. But just to give you an indication, Barnes & Noble was one of our major problems with the cover. They did not like the cover that we were using. They weren't going to buy the book because they hated the cover so much. This is a story we're getting. I, for one, never believe things like that, but you know, you can't take a chance unless they really mean what they say. And finally, we changed the cover, and everybody was able to at least just stop fighting about it. Barnes & Noble said, okay, they take 500 copies, which sounds great, but we're told that it's, you know, kind of average for a first-time writer. And then that Kirkus review came out, and they doubled their order. And that will give you an indication of how much power somebody, this is Kirkus, I didn't know who they were, I've never spoken to them, I don't know where they're located, I don't know who writes the stuff, and I don't think anybody does who's a writer. And yet they have such a tremendous influence over the market. It's kind of scary, you know, to know that that's going on.
Well, we are, as I began, we're in the early stages of a marketing campaign, and this is, I guess, our last preview party before we really get going with the booksellers. We have date what they call Arthur events at independent bookstores. The first week of June, 1 in Rhode Island, 2 in New York City, and as things stand now, we have about low 30s number of engagements at bookstores, kind of from Maine to Florida to Texas, and we're probably going farther west too. And this is all going to transpire over the next, well, we're scheduled through October right now for these 30-something visits to dispersed bookstores across half the United States, it seems. So we're packing our bags, and they're going to stay packed for a while.
And we would like to ask you all to ask any questions, to make any comments. In a way, although this is also a preview party for this group, it's rehearsal for us. We're going to be out talking to all kinds of groups of people. Things will be changed and more focused probably on book content and, you know, what Fatal, they've taken some pages from Fatal and stuffing them into Restrike so that you right away can decide whether or not you want to go ahead and get the next book. This has nothing to do with me. I tell you, you'd be amazed at how little influence an author has on this kind of thing. But I think when we get out there into the world of where, you know, people are buying books, the people are going to be asking questions. And the whole time that we were talking prints, for years and years and years and years, the first question somebody would ask is, why prints? And I thought, thank God I will never have to hear that again, nor will I have to explain it again. And it's in all of our writings and all of our books and so forth. Would you believe somebody asked us last night? And I just had to close my eyes and, you know, kind of, Dave answered. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But I'm absolutely confident that we need to be knowing what kind of questions people are going to ask us, you know, here out for the rest of this year. And so I don't know whether we're in the time frame where we're supposed to, but let's do it, okay? All right, the ladies first.
I'm fascinated that you both took the same courses along the way, and one was writing fiction and one was writing nonfiction.
These schools they offer separate courses. It's the same school, the same residents, but different mentors and different students. So actually they usually have three. There's a poetry group, a fiction group, and a creative nonfiction group.
And these are graduate schools, and you can go on and get an MFA. But I wasn't interested in MFA, so we didn't.
Who decides if and when it goes electronic?
Oh, well, that was decided for us before we barely even had the thing. It was decided before we barely even had anything else. The electronic copy will come out simultaneously with the hard copy, as will a couple of other things.
An audio copy is also coming out. And we listened to the first of that just last week. Two actors, an actress and an actor, have done it. We thought they were pretty good.
I know, and I kept saying, they only sent us a fragment to listen. We had it in the car, and I said, gosh, I wish we had the rest. I want to know how it turns out. The driver said, you're supposed to know, you wrote it. And I said, I forgot. I'm 3 books down from there. Yes.
Can you elaborate a little more about what the issue is with the cover art? As a writer, have you hired the illustrator, or is that the publisher?
Well, it depends. If it is a really, really big, rich publisher, and you are there, one of the top 2 or 3 writers, they have somebody who'll do it. You don't even have to think about it, but you get approval rights. It's in your contract. You know, if you're smart, you get approval, and even if you're not a big deal writer, you try to get that in your contract. But the problem is, that in our case, somebody told us that we had to have the cover ready such and such, and nobody was doing anything, so we thought that meant we were supposed to get it done. So we asked the publisher for some recommendations for an artist, and they gave us a whole bunch. And Dave went through them and checked and picked out somebody he thought was really good. And my books, I think, are about the characters. And I think that the plot will always be, you know, kind of different, but it's always going to be about these same characters. And so my idea was that you have the characters up front. And also I think Facebook and a lot of other things have got us all pictorially centered on things. And so I wanted to have these characters on the front cover of the book, which we did. And as soon as it got to the salesman and everybody else, they all hated it, and they all wanted to tell us what we should do, and it was all different, including McGraw-Hill. So it's
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble. Sorry, Barnes and Noble person.
So we tried to get an idea, but it was impossible to understand what everybody wanted. But I guess the one general thing was that they wanted more of an idea of the art world reflected in this cover, as opposed to just the characters. So we ended up with a composite of 4 pictures, framed pictures on the cover. Thank you. Is the way it turned out.
Yeah, this is the fun.
This was the original one of the 2 characters that was on the entire cover, and so we at least retained the characters, and you'll see there are actually 3 of them. Dolly the dog is important as well. But we ended up with 4 framed pictures to try to convey that this is the setting of this book, and all of the books is the art world.
I'll just show you the iconography. This is a gavel, and several of the things happen in auctions. Or you could also say, as I said before, if you read my titles carefully, it has more than one meaning. And in the case of restrike means to hit and hit and hit again. And this is clearly a weapon. And then this is New York, which is where it is, my characters. And down here, there is a print that's a Toulouse that sells in the course of this. So they wanted to get across more ideas and content. We didn't agree. And I still don't agree, but, you know, maybe someday I'll be important enough to be able to say, we're going to have a conversation. Maybe not. Okay, well, just a minute. I'm back here. He's been...
Well, I'm going to risk incurring your wrath because I asked a question about prints.
Yeah.
I have had an opportunity over the years to obviously see many of the prints that you have in your collection, but I certainly don't consider myself an expert. And when I received your book, and started to read it. I was apprehensive, quite frankly, that I wouldn't get some of the references to the art world and so forth. Did you keep that in mind, bear that in mind as you were writing the book? Would it appeal to people who aren't maybe as connected to the art world?
I'm not writing for the art world. I'm writing for mystery readers. And it didn't occur to me that most of the people that I was writing would, love all about the art, but I knew that a lot of people who are mystery readers are very curious and interested in all sorts of topics. And in general, I thought that there wasn't so much of it in there that they, kind of drowned in, technique. And that has proved to be the case. In fact, both of the reviews that we were talking about, these really big deal reviews, talk about this and say that it's done extremely well. That you could, if you want to and care to, you can learn a lot about Prince, but you don't have to. You don't need to understand the plot or why people are being killed or whatever is going on. And I think that the trouble with true art mysteries, they get so involved in telling you about the paint and the technique, and you lose track of the plot. And to me, I only care about two things really. This is that you love my characters. I really, really care about that. And that you're intrigued and I hope challenged by the plot. I really love it when people say, I never guessed. I never thought. I never would have dreamed. And so that's what I really care about. And you'll always get a little bit of the art world in the books, but in the London one, it's much more about England. And so they're all going to change some. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. You're right.
What is your favorite venture when collecting prints?
Well, I stopped thinking about that a long time ago.
I couldn't hear the question.
Your favorite adventure when collecting?
Well, you'll have to read my book. That's really what my book is about. It's very anecdotal, and it tells stories around our acquisitions and stories about the art objects that we acquire. And it's really hard to pick a favorite, but one that is a very awkward one was that I was bragging to Reba and a dealer friend that I would deal with the devil if I had to acquire the print that I wanted. Of course, never thinking I would. And sure enough, within a month, the devil called. And the devil was a disgraced print dealer who had been caught stealing prints from the several museums, including the Metropolitan Museum.
Of which day was entrusted.
And he had a print that he had been absolutely shunned by the entire dealer community. He didn't belong. He had been thrust out of the organization. And he was considered a very bad guy. And but I really wanted this print, and it was very hard to find. I wanted it a long time, and dealers didn't have it. Nobody had it. So, sure enough, I went, and very nervously, very apprehensively, didn't know quite what was going to happen. The devil couldn't have been nicer. Charged me quite a bit, but I got the print. And I never asked about the provenance of it. And I think the answer was I really didn't want to know the provenance of the print.
This is highly risky to do this. And I'm going to Charlie first. I'll be back to you, Charlie.
I have two questions. One, is Rescribe going to be printed in hardback also?
No. Excuse me.
Oh,
Sorry. Oh, God, it wasn't that again. This one would be, the world said at the time we were doing this that the people are so rarely buying hardcover books anymore that for a first novel, that kind of thing, to even try to go into hardcover was just ridiculous. And everything's just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and people don't want to buy hardcover books. So, we didn't learn anything. You've got to understand that. I mean, there are a lot of things that I'd argue about, but I I've been so ignorant on most of the things that have come up, so I don't think I'll ever have, unless I get to be really, really important somehow out there, maybe I'll get a hardcover book.
Second question, being former McKinsey people and business people, tell us about, do royalties in the digital world work the same way as they do in the printed world, or how does that work as far as royalties?
Royalties are minuscule. And somebody was just telling us about this the other day. I've forgotten what it was. Their book came in. Can you remember the royalties that they got?
It was measured in single number cents.
5 cents worth of royalties. 6 months later, it was about the same. It's just pathetic.
The royalty on the electronic version, because it's so much cheaper, the royalty is a percentage, so it's a percentage of a smaller number is a smaller number, and so it's a lot less. And it seems like a game that nobody makes money, and even Amazon doesn't seem to be making money. But certainly the paper publishers are hand-to-mouth and cutting staff constantly and pushing the marketing burden onto the author. All of that.
The poor writers are getting poorer and poorer. I really pity my friends the poets because they never made much for that, and now.
I want to ask you about a form of publishing that's rarely discussed, but both of you have been involved in it. I used to wait with great anticipation for the annual report of Alliance Capital Management because it was so wonderfully illustrated and produced and written. And I also got Irving Trust Company, which one year won an award. I don't remember who gives such an award, but it was awarded the best annual report. I thought yours was always the best. But now, Alliance Bernstein doesn't have anything approaching what you produced. You were on the board of trustees and you were the chairman, and you put out this wonderful annual report, and Irving Trust Company now belongs to Sod Farmers. So, what would you say about that?
Well, Reba would probably say a lot because she was responsible for the annual report, both design and text. So,
You know, we probably didn't know there was a prize. We were kind of almost as ignorant as that kind of thing. Did you want to know there was a prize for a great annual report? Did you know that?
Quite a few over here.
Well, you never told
They
us.
seem to be disappearing.
Yeah. And as far as anything that goes on there now, we know nothing. You know, you pass on that one. Okay.
Writing mystery novels, I imagine, takes quite a specific technique. And I wondered, is that something that you learned, or did it come naturally because you're a mystery reader, or could you tell us about that?
I can tell you that, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to use this thing. I like to read mysteries, and I like particular kinds of mysteries, and I've written in my website that I still adhere to the golden rules, which go with the glorious days of book writing, mystery book writing, you know, when it was Agatha, and, you know, all those people, and they had a list of things that they thought had to be in a mystery. And they're, you know, you should meet the killer along the way, and he's in there. It's up to you to guess who it is, but you can't bring him on kind of the end and say, well, it was John who did it all, and you haven't met John all during the book. And people do that. And you also have a whole lot of other things that those very, very, very first great mystery writers. And I try to adhere to those rules. In the schools today, mostly they don't approve of mysteries to start with. They don't approve of genre. Everyone wants you to write what's called literary fiction. The fact that very few people want to read it or buy it doesn't seem to bother. But in any case, I don't think I ever learned anything specifically about mystery writing in school.
One more question. I was wondering which print fired your enthusiasm for collecting? Which was the first print that really sparked off the desire to have a world-class collection?
Well, it was probably different in each of our cases. Probably the print that I remember most is being first or near first in terms of what I wanted and acquired and hooked me was the Reginald Marsh New York City scene, a burlesque scene. And it was a classic for the artist. And it evoked old New York, which was, as newcomers to New York, or relatively outsiders to New York, old New York seemed romantic and interesting. And that was the print that probably set me on my way. I think Reba got really interested in acquisition when we discovered color woodcut prints.
We kept what I like best. We gave away 5,000 plus prints, and not one of my favorites went out.
So we still have a collection of color woodcut prints.
We do, and a lot of them were done by Southern artists, and a lot of them were done by women. And they're flowers almost always, and that's considered kind of hokey. You know, you're really supposed to like abstracts and stuff like that. But you come into our apartment in New York, and they're all there, and it's kind of glorious. And in the first when you come in, I have some black and white flower prints, and the artist is one that you all would never have heard of, but for a lot of reasons, you should have heard of her. She, talk a little bit about my great friend, the Magnolia Lady.
And the boys?
No, the black and white ones in the foreign.
Oh, Anna Haywood Taylor.
Oh, no.
Okay.
she's the last of the
Margaret Patterson?
Forget it. If he doesn't know.
I need a better cue.
No, this is an artist who's from Tennessee, and she specializes in magnolias. But the reason that she's very, very famous is she's the last of a great painting family. It started in Philadelphia. Come on down.
Her name is almost impossible to pronounce. Her family name. I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
She does have the family was all named for artists. And
The family name is Peel, P-E-A-L-E.
Yes, but all the Peel children were named with all these incredible, really strange names. And she was the last of the Peels, except her name's not Peel. And she's got this absolutely unpronounceable, one-time Italian great, that's what I put you out, one I can't pronounce, there. And I wanted to do a whole history of the Peels in prints and end with her. And I just never got to it. Dave says we've got cabinets full of things that I left unfinished when I abandoned print research.
But a couple of the color woodcut artists that Reba's collected are Charlestonians. Anna Haywood Taylor and who else am I thinking?
Alice Brown.
Yes, we've got them all.
That's right. Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering, what writing course would you recommend for somebody that's thinking of becoming a mystery writer? You said that there were several courses you took. I was wondering if you could recommend one that you found most beneficial.
I'll give you one that I didn't find most beneficial because I'm sorry with it. I didn't take it because it wasn't in existence. The Center for Fiction in New York has opened a school of mystery writing. And they are getting all the best mystery writers all over the country to come in and teach technique. And I think it is an absolutely dazzling idea. And I think that anybody who wants to write mystery should come to New York and, find out more about it and see what they can do. I don't know of anyone else who's teaching mystery writing. Sir.
Reba, you sponsor an award now in Southern fiction,
Yes.
named in honor of Willie Morris,
Yes.
who I've heard rumored today at the University of Texas. My question, though, is, have the winners of that award gotten published?
Oh.
Are they what?
And they're not published.
Yes, our most recent winner was this was his first novel, But for the most part, I think now will be the 6th award coming up this year. Of the 5 that have been awarded, I believe 4 of them had published before the book that won the award. So they're not necessarily first-time authors. We like it. We prefer to give an award to somebody who perhaps hasn't gotten a lot of attention and might be a first-time or second-time published book.
Yes, it would be ideal if that person, could become more famous and better known, and I think that has happened in the most recent one. A guy called Stephen Webb, he's from from Virginia, and he teaches in New York, and I think teaches at Hunter. And I think that this publication of this book and what it has done for him is a great deal. Going back, I think that one of the books was called Crooked Letter, Crooked Letter, Crooked Letter. You know how we were all taught to spell Mississippi when we were young? Well, that's what it's about. And that book, I was told that it became particularly famous in Europe. And in Ireland, somebody was there, and the book was everywhere. And the mind boggles as to think what Irish people were thinking of this title, which is never explained in the book. You just have to know that that's what it was. Mystified.
Well, I'm looking at my watch, and I'm told things really do shut down here. It's right, stroke of 1:30. But let me say thanks for both of us for your attention and interest. We enjoyed it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you both for a fascinating insight into the publishing world and into your really inspiring, productive energy. We feel really privileged to be on your preview tour, and I'm sure you've got lots of future readers here among us all.
That woman's name, and I won't say it right, but I'm going to try, is Sophonis Hertesheim. And she's Greek. And you can see why I wanted somebody else to say it, because it doesn't really do too well with my accent.
One last thing, next week, for the first time ever, we have 2 wide-angle lunches. One on Tuesday with John Kennedy, the conductor of the Spoleto Festival Orchestra, and he will be talking about Matsukaze, the opera which is premiering here, and I'm really excited about that talk. He'll also talk about the way that the Spoleto Festival Orchestra particularly chooses young, up-and-coming musicians. And on Thursday, we have Leslie Green Bowman, president of the Monticello Thomas Jefferson Foundation, and that promises also to be a very exciting talk. So we hope that some of you will manage to come twice next week, and please buy your tickets well in advance. Thank you all so much for coming.